Imagine waking up tomorrow to discover that half of what you consider reality is actually a construction of your mind. Not in a sci-fi simulation way, but in a very ordinary, everyday way. The colors you see, the sounds you hear, even what you think people mean when they talk to you, all of it filtered. Right now, as you watch this, your eyes are hitting millions of bits of visual data. Your ears are catching vibrations in the air. Your skin is sensing temperature and pressure. But here's the twist. Your brain throws most of that away. It selects, edits, fills in the gaps, and then quietly presents you with a smooth, convincing story called reality. In this video, we're going to peel back that story. We'll look at how evolution, attention, memory, culture, and technology all bend what you experience, often without you noticing at all. To understand how reality is filtered through perception, we first need to be clear on one thing. There's the world out there, and then there's your experience of it. Those two are related, but they are not the same. Perception is the brain's ongoing attempt to interpret raw sensory input and turn it into a usable model of the world. It's less like a camera recording everything and more like a storyteller stitching together fragments into a coherent narrative. Across this video, we'll walk through 11 key layers of that filtering process: sensation, attention, prediction, memory, emotion, language, culture, identity, social influence, technology, and finally, awareness itself. If you're interested in psychology, self-awareness, or just understanding why people can see the same event so differently, stay with me all the way to the end. And if you like content that digs into how the mind really works, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss future deep dives. Let's start with the basics. Sensation versus perception. Sensation is the raw data, light hitting your retinas, sound waves vibrating your eardrums, chemicals interacting with receptors in your nose and tongue. Perception is what your brain makes out of that chaos. Your eyes don't see objects. They detect patterns of light and shadow. Your ears don't hear words. They detect pressure changes in the air. The brain then groups, interprets, and labels these patterns based on what it has learned over a lifetime. Think about the classic optical illusion, where a drawing can look like either a young woman or an old lady. The lines on the page don't change, your perception flips. Or when you stare at a random cloud and suddenly it looks like a dragon, nothing in the sky changed. Your brain imposed meaning. From the very first moment, what feels like direct contact with reality is actually interpretation layered onto sensation. If perception starts with sensation, it's immediately shaped by attention, what your brain decides to focus on. Attention is like a spotlight on a dark stage. Whatever it illuminates feels like reality, and everything in the dark just vanishes from your awareness. There's a famous experiment where people watch a video of players passing a basketball and are asked to count the passes. Half the viewers fail to notice a person in a gorilla suit walking right through the scene. The gorilla was objectively there, fully visible. But without attention, it might as well not exist. This is called inattentional blindness. It happens constantly in everyday life. When you're stressed, you tend to notice threats. When you're in love, you notice every tiny signal from that one person. Same world, different attentional filters. So even before we get to beliefs or culture, your basic sense of what's happening right now is shaped by where you point your limited attention. One of the most powerful ideas in modern neuroscience is that the brain is a prediction machine. It doesn't passively wait for information. It constantly guesses what's out there, then updates those guesses based on incoming data. In this view, perception is more like controlled hallucination. Your brain generates a best guess model of the world and checks the sensory input to see if it needs correcting. Most of what you see is actually your brain's prediction, not raw data. This is why you can read a sentence with jumbled letters as long as the first and last are correct. Your brain fills in the rest. It's also why you sometimes hear your name in random noise or think your phone buzzed when it didn't. Expectations prime your senses. If you expect hostility, neutral faces may look threatening. If you expect opportunity, small hints look like openings. Your prior beliefs literally shape what becomes visible to you. Even if two people sense and predict the world in similar ways, memory ensures they don't carry the same reality forward. Memory is not a hard drive, it's a reconstruction. Every time you recall an event, you're not replaying a recording, you're rebuilding a story. Psychologists have shown that people can confidently remember details that were never there, especially if they're suggested afterward. Over time, memories get edited to fit our current beliefs and emotions. The past is not fixed in your mind, it's continually rewritten. This means your personal reality is partly made of stories your brain keeps updating. An embarrassing event from school might become funnier years later, and your memory will quietly emphasize the humorous parts. A relationship can be remembered as mostly good or mostly bad, depending on where you are now. So when you say, "This is who I am based on my past," you're leaning on a perception of history, filtered through countless reconstructions. Emotion is another powerful filter. You don't just see the world, you feel your way through it, and those feelings color everything. Anxiety, for example, can make harmless situations seem dangerous. Joy can make minor annoyances almost invisible. Neuroscience shows that emotion and perception are tightly linked. The amygdala, a key emotion processing area, influences what your brain flags as important. Under fear, you're more likely to notice angry faces, sharp objects, sudden movements. Under calm curiosity, you pick up subtler patterns and possibilities. Think of walking down the same street on two different days. On a bad day, you notice trash, frowns, traffic noise. On a good day, you notice birds, sunlight, interesting architecture. The street didn't change, your emotional lens did. Emotional states can be temporary, like a mood, or long-term, like chronic stress or depression. In both cases, they tilt your perception, making certain realities louder and others nearly silent. Language doesn't just describe reality, it shapes how you carve it up. Different languages divide the color spectrum differently, categorize time differently, even treat objects as more or less alive depending on grammar. For instance, some languages group light and dark blue as completely separate basic colors, while others use one word for a broader range. Speakers of those languages literally become faster at distinguishing certain shades because their language trains their attention. We also build mental categories through words: success, failure, ugly, beautiful, normal, weird. These aren't raw facts. They're linguistic labels layered onto experience. Once you learn them, they become filters. You may reject a new idea simply because it falls into a labeled box you dislike. Even the metaphors you grow up with, time is money versus time is a journey, shift how you experience your own life. Through language, your culture quietly hands you a toolkit for constructing reality. Culture is the wider operating system your mind runs on. It gives you shared symbols, norms, and expectations that make the world feel stable and meaningful, but also narrow what feels possible or true. Consider eye contact. In some cultures, it's a sign of respect and confidence. In others, too much eye contact feels aggressive or rude. The physical act is the same, but the perceived meaning is completely different. Culture shapes what you consider a normal life path, what counts as success, which questions feel dangerous to ask, even what emotions are acceptable to display. Two people from different cultures can watch the same movie and come away with radically different interpretations of who the hero is. This doesn't mean culture is bad, it's necessary. But it does mean that what feels like obvious reality is often just shared perception. When you step into another culture, you suddenly realize how much of your world was constructed, not inevitable. Your sense of identity, who you believe you are, acts like a master filter. Once you adopt a story about yourself, you start selectively noticing evidence that confirms it and ignoring what doesn't. If you see yourself as the responsible one, you'll remember the times you stepped up and downplay the times you didn't. If you secretly believe I'm unlovable, you might interpret neutral behavior as rejection and dismiss genuine affection as a fluke. This is related to confirmation bias, the tendency to search for, interpret, and remember information in ways that support your existing beliefs. Identity makes certain perceptions feel personal, almost sacred. Criticism of your opinion can feel like criticism of your existence. The result is a self-reinforcing loop. Your self-image shapes your perception, and your perception reinforces your self-image. Breaking that loop requires being willing to see moments that don't fit your usual story about who you are. We don't perceive reality alone. We co-create it with others. Social influence, group norms, and authority can dramatically bend what people believe they see. Classic psychology experiments show this vividly. In Solomon Asch's conformity experiments, participants were asked to compare line lengths. When Confederates in the group gave obviously wrong answers, many participants went along doubting their own perception. In the Milgram experiment, people administered what they believed were painful shocks simply because an authority figure told them to continue. On social media, algorithmic bubbles amplify this effect. You're surrounded by voices that echo your views, making your version of reality feel more and more obvious and unquestionable. Opposing perspectives start to seem not just wrong, but insane. Humans are wired to belong, and belonging often means aligning our perceptions with the group. Recognizing that pull doesn't make you immune, but it does give you a little space to pause and ask, what am I not seeing? Technology adds a new layer to the filter stack. Our phones, feeds, and recommendation algorithms decide which slices of the world reach us at all. They become curators of our perceived reality. News feeds prioritize content that triggers engagement, often outrage, fear, or curiosity. Over time, you may feel like the world is mostly crisis, conflict, and catastrophe because those are the stories rising to the top. But the planet is also full of quiet cooperation and kindness that simply doesn't go viral. Augmented reality and filters literally change what your camera sees. GPS, step counters, and productivity trackers turn your life into charts and notifications. Tech doesn't just show you the world, it nudges what you notice and how you interpret it. When you ask, what's really going on in the world, you're often really asking, what did my devices show me today? Recognizing that mediation is vital if you want any hope of seeing beyond it. With all these filters, sensation, attention, prediction, memory, emotion, language, culture, identity, social forces, technology, it can sound like we're trapped in illusions. But there's another layer, meta-perception, or awareness of the filters themselves. You can't step completely outside your mind, but you can start to notice how it operates. When you recognize, I'm anxious, so everything feels threatening, that recognition already loosens the filter. When you catch yourself doom scrolling and think, this is a very narrow slice of the world, you've widened the frame. Practices like mindfulness, journaling, therapy, and honest conversation help you observe your perceptions instead of being fully fused with them. So does deliberately seeking out different cultures, viewpoints, and disciplines. The goal isn't to find a perfect, unfiltered reality. That may be impossible. The goal is to hold your perceptions more lightly, with curiosity instead of certainty, and to update them when new evidence appears. Let's pull the threads together with a few key takeaways. First, perception is constructed, not copied. Your brain doesn't mirror the world, it builds a model from limited, noisy data. Second, many filters shape that model. Where you place your attention, what you expect, how you feel, the language you use, the culture you inhabit, the story you tell about who you are, the groups you belong to, and the technologies you use. Third, these filters are not inherently bad. They help you survive, function, and find meaning. The problem isn't that they exist, it's when you mistake your filtered experience for the whole truth. Finally, awareness is leverage. When you notice your own biases and emotional states, when you expose yourself to diverse perspectives, you expand the range of realities you can perceive. You become less reactive, more curious, and more capable of changing your mind. Reality may be filtered, but those filters are, to some extent, adjustable. If this exploration of perception and reality resonated with you, don't let it stay as just an interesting idea. Turn it into a daily practice. Over the next few days, gently ask yourself, what filter might be active right now? Is it a mood, a belief about yourself, an assumption about someone else's intentions? Notice how quickly your experience shifts when you question it. You can also experiment with simple exercises, deliberately shifting your attention to small, pleasant details, reading news from outside your usual bubble, or having a conversation where you listen mainly to understand the other person's world, not to defend your own. If you'd like more content on how the mind works, how to think more clearly, and how to live with deeper self-awareness, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you don't miss upcoming videos. Share this with someone who sees the world differently from you. You might discover you've both been right in your own filtered ways.